With the addition of Bolt Charge to Arc in episode Heresy, it's been far more game-changing than most people had originally anticipated. So today, I'll be covering a powerful new build for all three classes, each in under 3 minutes or less. These builds are all enhanced by the Arc-based artifact mods shown on screen, but still function properly without them for those of you who haven't had the chance to grind out loads of XP just yet. And since this is a brief overview of each build, all of the armor mods and intricate details of each build can be found in the dim links below. If you enjoyed today's video, a like and subscription would be greatly appreciated. Now let's get straight into it. First up, we have a build for our hunters. Since natural bolt charge gains are actually tied to Tempest Strike on the Arc subclass, and the fact that Tempest Strike takes the spot of other key aspects, I've actually opted for Prismatic to build around bolt charge instead. So let's start with what we're trying to achieve here. First and foremost, we want to take advantage of bolt charge and do so in a way that is viable for hunters in endgame content. Bolt charge is great, but if you die trying to use it, then what's the point? So at a glance, what makes this Prismatic build so strong? First off, we have Silk Strike. Though the super is decent, it's actually being used to provide us with Woven Mail for a consistent 45% damage resist every time we pick up an Orb of Power, thanks to Facet of Purpose. We can then take Stylish Executioner and Ascension as our two aspects for even greater survivability. Stylish grants us invisibility each time we kill a target afflicted with an elemental debuff, while Ascension makes us amplified and jolts targets within a 10-meter radius. And since Jolt is an elemental debuff, when we kill these enemies, we become invisible, allowing you to approach groups of enemies with an extremely satisfying gameplay loop. We can then take the survivability a step further by adding Gifted Conviction to the mix, an exotic chess piece that grants us even more damage resist based on the number of targets we jolt with Ascension, and is stackable with the other resistances like Woven Mail that I mentioned earlier. This additional damage resist caps out at an extra 50%, making you unbelievably tanky, and sets us up perfectly to use one of the newly issued Rolling Storm weapons from episode Heresy for Bolt Charge. Psycho Pump is actually best in slot for this thanks to the damage over time quickly ramping Bolt Charge, and is obtainable for most players from the new seasonal Nether activity. This helps elevate our ad clear and feed the light side of our Transcendence bar in the process. I also recommend Withering Blade and Grapple for our melee and grenade abilities to help build the dark side of the Transcendence bar as well. Notable fragments are Facet of Protection for even more damage resist, Facet of Hope for faster class ability regen, while the rest of the fragments are all personal preference. As stated at the start of the video, all armor mods and further details can be found in the build links below, but they all center around healing and ability cycling to make this gameplay loop even more reliable and survivable in endgame content. In fact, all of the footage showcased in this video was at a -20 power delta. Moving on to our Warlocks, Heresy came with a new arc aspect that will be the focal point of today's build. The Ionic Sentry not only does a great job generating Bolt Charge, it also blinds enemies when cast, giving Warlocks a unique blend of destruction and crowd control all in one. While useful on its own, you need a way to fuel the turret's uptime, which is where the newly buffed Geomag stabilizers come in. Chaos Reach will be used to take advantage of Geomags, and while its DPS isn't as high as something like a Falling Star Thunder Crash, it does have similar total damage. It may take a bit longer to use, but we also have extremely high uptime on this super thanks to the significantly buffed ability regen from Ionic Traces with this exotic. Our aspects will include the Ionic Sentry as mentioned earlier, with Electrostatic Mind generating Ionic Traces on ability final blows, Bolt Charge kills, and defeating jolted targets. And since Geomags had their ability regen buffed from 2% all the way up to 7% per Ionic Trace, these two aspects pair perfectly with one another to maintain high uptime on your turrets and the rest of your abilities. Our weapon choices are also extremely important here, as kinetic and arc weapons generate Ionic Sentry stacks to fuel more frequently spawned turrets. I highly recommend weapons with Volt Shot, Jolting Feedback, Rolling Storm, and Demolitionist to help generate stacks even faster. The more grenades you can throw, the better, especially when paired with Spark of Shock, which allows our grenades to jolt enemy targets. Spark of Resistance is great for survivability, while Spark of Beacons allows our arc special and heavy weapons to blind enemy targets, giving this build an extra layer of CC. This is essentially a more aggressive version of the stasis turret builds that have been so popular over the past few years, and actually does extremely well in endgame content. And last, but definitely not least, we have our Titans. Arc Titan is probably the biggest winner of any subclass in episode Heresy, as the brand new Storm's Keep aspect has completely shifted the endgame meta. This ability has already helped people solo the Zoetic Lockset in the new dungeon, putting out absurd levels of damage thanks to its near infinite loop with Bolt Charge. This aspect grants ×4 bolt charge when casting your barricade, grants additional bolt charge stacks when sitting behind your barricade, and allows bolt charge to trigger on weapon damage instead of just abilities. You thought Psychopomp was strong on the other two classes? Well, on Titan, the combination of your barricade, a damage over time weapon, and the ability to trigger bolt charge with weapon damage literally turns you into Thor, constantly raining lightning down from the sky. This can be used during boss DPS for additional passive damage, or in wave-based content for giga-charged ad clear. Now this is obviously extremely powerful on its own, but this class also gains extra value right now thanks to Knockout being the most consistent form of healing in the Nether at the moment. Not only do you have high damage, you also have constant healing with your melee. And nothing takes advantage of this better than Thunderclap paired with an insurmountable SkullTHORt. Thunderclap does some pretty substantial damage in PvE right now, and this exotic refunds our charged melee every time we secure a charged melee kill. And even if you happen to miss, the regen from rapid bolt charge kills helps refund your abilities in no time. SkullTHORt is great for ad clear and can be loadout swapped with Cuirass of the Falling Star before damage in boss fights, so you can have the best ad clear and the highest burst damage super in the game all in one. The combination of heavy-handed, knockout, and recuperation basically lets us heal to full on every powered melee kill. Notable fragments include Spark of Resistance for 20% damage resist when surrounded by enemy combatants, Spark of Shock, which allows our grenades to apply jolt on hit, and Spark of Frequency for an additional stack of bolt charge from all sources, which builds up our lightning strikes even faster. This build is absolutely destroying endgame PvE right now, and as a reminder, if you have any further questions on any of the setups today, all of my recommended fragments and armor mods can be found in the dim links below. And that concludes 3 endgame builds for 3 different classes, all in 3 minutes or less. If you enjoyed this style of video, be sure to let me know down in the comments below, and I'd love to see what other builds you guys have been rocking so far in episode Heresy. Anyways, that's it from me. Thank you all so very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Peace!